Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson MED.5.1 on early note against note counterpoint. So counterpoint is the study of how two or more lines of music might be written so that they sound good. Depending on who you are, you might think different things sound good, so historically it's shifted as people have disagreed about what sounds good. If you looked at counterpoint in Unit 6 before coming here, then you got to hear what Baroque Central Western European composers thought sounded good. So now we're going to be looking at how this counterpoint has evolved throughout the medieval era. So the earliest indications we have of counterpoint are from the Musica and Curiatus, sometime in the late 800s, and some of the examples are reproduced here. And then the second. So there are two different kinds of motion that we see here. Sometimes it's in parallel, where the two voices move the same distance in the same direction. Then there's also oblique, when one voice stays still and the other voice moves. So those are the two types of contrapuntal motion that we see here. When they do move in parallel, usually they're moving in fourths, or in unisons at the end here. Fifths would also be possible in some other examples. Scolica in Curiatus is a commentary written around the same time that describes similar practices. You can accompany melody with a drone, that would be oblique motion, where one voice stays steady and the other voice is moving around, or by moving in strict parallel at perfect intervals, so the octave, the fifth, or the fourth. So in practice, these were combined, sometimes one, sometimes the other, but if you're doubling at the fifth or the fourth, then you might have some issues. So here we have a doubling at the octave. There are no issues. But now we get to B, say we want to double at the fifth. So we go. So in this first bar here, there are some issues, because if we want perfect fifths, then right off the bat we start with a perfect fifth, then we go to a tritone and back to a perfect fifth. So one solution would be one solution would be to make this an E flat to make a perfect fifth, but then should that also be an E flat? Are we going to maintain a consistent scale here? And if we made that an E flat, then that would have to be an A flat, and then you have to go back and make everything A flat. So one solution would be that you can have different examples of letter names in different parts. So like an E flat in this part and an E natural in the top part, which is often the approach that the treatises take. And the Dacian scale that we looked at in MED.1.2, that is where that scale comes from. So another solution would be to make use of some oblique counterpoint to just avoid the problem entirely. So here's an example at the fourth. So what we want to avoid is having any B's in the lower part, because that would be a B flat against an E. So it uses oblique counterpoint later on to achieve that. So we're mostly in fourths. And then, oh wait, we're not anymore. And you might notice that all of these are ending on a unison. This is known as an accursus when that happens, or a meeting. So this was the late 800s. Now we're looking at the early 1000s. Guido wrote, who gave us the Guidonian hand, also wrote a treatise, Micrologus, and some highlights from here that apply to counterpoint include, there's more than one right way to do it. So it's not a science, it's an art. There are multiple valid solutions. He likes also having the accursus at the end of passages, so coming together on the same note. According to Guido, the second was a consonance, and he didn't really like the fifth. It sounded too hard. So again, this is his personal preference. And he favored a variety of intervals over the strict parallels that we saw in the 800s, so that allows for smoother voice leading, and unlike counterpoint in other areas that you may have seen, the voices can cross each other. So here are the diamond is the given line, and then the black ovals are Guido's new line. So here are two examples he gave to the same melody. That's option 1. Here's option 2. So pretty similar. And then here's an example where the voices dip above and below each other. So you can see the diamond sometimes on top, sometimes it's below. So obviously that's just an example where the added voice is a drone, and that is all oblique motion. There's another fragment from the late 1000s that shows the more independence in the new voice, the vox originalis. So here we see a wide variety of intervals, including sixths, which were not considered to be consonants. And we'll listen to these two examples. Then here in our second example, the accursus occurs on an octave rather than a unison. Sorry. I'll start one more time. So you'll note that there were both B flats and B naturals. Remember, those are both pitches that are in the hand, depending on whether you're in an F hexachord or a G hexachord. This last treatise, How to Do Organum, from around 1100, demonstrates some rules that they believed at that point. So begin with a perfect interval. In the middle, use mostly fourths and fifths, with occasional unisons and octaves, and then end with a unison, fifth, or octave. So these were some allowable combinations for the end. Here it's a fifth going to an octave. So let's take a listen to this one. So other treatises from around this time and a bit later have similar guidelines to what we've seen here, with varying degrees of strictness. Some allow thirds and sixths in the middle, even at the beginning. So depending on what era you're trying to look at, from the 800s through the 1100s, you might be looking at slightly different things. But I think the main thing to keep in mind here is that different people had different opinions, and there isn't one right way to do this. So go ahead, try writing some counterpoint of your own, and I'll see you next time.